Welcome to this special edition of Go Vote Omaha, a candidate forum for Omaha City Council District 1, presented by the League of Women Voters of Greater Omaha. I'm Jasmine Frazier, Co-Director of Public Policy for the League and your host for today's program. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization and does not endorse political candidates or parties. Our purpose is to empower voters and defend democracy. Go Vote Omaha primarily focuses on policy issues, and as a result of our discussions, we hope you will feel ready to make an informed decision during election time. The format is as follows. Each candidate will get a 1-minute opening statement, followed by questions prepared by the League of Women Voters. Each candidate will answer every question and will have up to 90 seconds to answer. Following the questions, each candidate will have a 1-minute closing statement. We alternate speaking order throughout the forum. A timekeeper will signal candidates when they have 30 seconds of time remaining and when to stop speaking. Before the forum, the League prepared a list of questions, and we will go ahead with those right now. We also picked the candidates' names out of a hat to set the initial speaking order. I will introduce them now in that order. Joining us today are two of the candidates for District 1 Omaha City Council, Pete Festersen and Sarah Johnson. Paul Anderson and Taisha Kosmicki was unable to join us tonight. We will start with a 1-minute opening statement by the candidates. Pete, you're up first.
Well, thank you. And I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for having us here tonight. I'm Pete Festersen. I'm running for re-election to Omaha City Council District 1. I was born and raised in District 1. I went to Central High School. My two girls go to Central High School now, and my wife is a preschool teacher in the district. So I'm deeply committed to it and always have been. It's been an honor to serve, and I think together we've accomplished many great things. We've renovated the Dundee, Benson, and Florence business districts. We've prioritized public safety and deterred property crime. We've resurfaced neighborhood streets and supported alternative transit and helped line on property taxes. But no doubt it's been a challenging year for our city, both in terms of social unrest and of course the COVID-19 pandemic. So I think we need experienced leadership to address these issues going forward and to help us with our economic recovery. This will lead us into a number of complex issues, and I look forward to speaking with you tonight about them. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. Sarah, take it away.
Thank you so much. First of all, again, just really want to thank the League of Women Voters for the time tonight and opportunity to share my ideas with everyone. Again, my name is Sarah Johnson, and I'm running for Omaha City Council in District 1. I'm running as an independent candidate because I think Omaha deserves passionate and responsive civic leaders, good listeners who value people over politics. You may recognize me from the Omaha Bicycle Company, my small bike and coffee shop that I owned and operated in Benson for many years, or maybe from my work with Mode Shift Omaha, a transportation equity nonprofit that I helped start over a decade ago. Maybe you've seen me speaking out at City Hall over the years, working hard to impact policy as an advocate and activist. Now I'm excited to take that work to the next level as a city councilor in District 1. I look forward to dedicating myself to the position full-time and will truly listen to you, and I'm ready to be your voice and advocate inside City Hall. I think it's time for courageous conversations. We can't fix what we won't focus on, and I believe Omaha needs proactive, community-driven representatives. I'm excited to earn your support. Again, I'm Sarah Johnson, and I'm running for City Council in District 1.
Thank you, Sarah. All right, now on to the questions. First question, what do you believe are the biggest concerns for residents of your district? Sarah, you're up first.
Thank you for the question. From talking with voters over the last several years, from being at the bike shop, I was pretty plugged into what the community was talking about. But recently, I really think it's time for responsive and proactive community leaders. I've unfortunately heard that people aren't feeling like their voices are being heard. I mean, 2020 was a very transformative year for a lot of us. And I think that a lot of folks have realized that it's time for people at City Hall to really engage with the community so that we feel that we're actually part of the decision making that's happening. I think that, of course, COVID response. As a small business owner myself, I understand how complicated and stressful it is to be a small business owner, not during a pandemic. So specifically during the response, we need to be a little bit more creative with the way that we bounce back. I have seen countless communities across the globe that are doing a lot of really innovative and creative economic response, meaning the way that we're using streets, whether it's opening up for not just car parking, but street seating for restaurants. Mental health is something that's come up a lot. When we open up the streets for people and not just dedicate them to cars, people can transport themselves, whether it's bike, walk, bus, or enjoy recreation as well. So a lot of stuff has come up, but I think communication is the top of the list.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, next up is Pete.
Well, first and foremost, I think we need to remain focused on keeping our citizens safe and guiding ourselves through the pandemic and leading our economic recovery in that respect. We do have a lot of people struggling right now. The City Council just approved $24 million in rental assistance for folks that are struggling to stay in their homes. We have small businesses and restaurants that are struggling too. I'm working on getting aid to them as well through this most recent COVID relief bill passed by the federal government that will benefit the city of Omaha as well. So those things continue and must be a priority. People in my district also care a lot about public safety. That needs to be an ongoing priority. We care a lot about neighborhood streets and street resurfacing right now, especially when we have our challenges with freeze and thaw and potholes. That's important. But we do need to pivot to underlying issues too that we all heard about in the last year and listen to what we're hearing about them and really prioritize those as well. And those underlying issues, I think, are poverty and unemployment, but also things like affordable housing and public transit and certainly mental health strategies. I attempted to amend the city budget and add $2 million for mental health this last year. It passed, but was vetoed. So I'm continuing to work on that and spent a few hours today at City Hall working on an affordable housing strategy that I think is really important for us going forward too.
Thank you, Pete. Question number 2. Are there any specific ordinance that you intend to introduce if you are elected? Pete, you're first.
Yes, we have had proactive activity on the City Council. In fact, I would say the City Council's been the proactive entity getting things done at City Hall in recent years, whether that's for non-discrimination purposes or whether that's for housing. The landlord registry that we initiated and passed, I think, was a very important piece of legislation to provide safe and affordable housing of our current stock. But going forward, I mentioned affordable housing, working on that today. We do need to look at that and have city action on that. In addition to the landlord registry, things like amending TIF policy and how tax increment financing works and how it can incent or even require affordable housing and products coming to the city, I think has to be part of a larger strategy to address that issue. But it's not just legislation, it's working together with our partners in the development community, in the philanthropic community, and others that can really make an impact on that issue because that challenge is that large. And that's the same when we talk about something like mental health. The city actually has not been involved very much in that issue in the past, but needs to be. We need to be a partner with the county and with the state and with providers and with school districts where everyone knows this is a big challenge for our kids and for adults going forward. And we need to have skin in that game, both financially and be part of a strategy that certainly includes the police department, but the police department should never be the first contact for somebody in mental health crisis.
Thank you, Pete. Sarah, you're up next.
Yeah, thank you. There are a few things that I think would be important to get started on right away. Homelessness is a huge issue, and with the housing crisis that we're facing, tackling affordable housing is crucial. So first of all, defining affordable housing, I think it's ridiculous that we don't have a technical definition of what affordable means. Speaking of definitions, I'd also like to classify sidewalks as part of the transportation system. They aren't currently defined as part, and I think that would change the way that we look at them as more of a holistic network of transportation. I had a really interesting conversation last week with the Wichita Police Department, who started a program called HOTS. It's a homeless outreach team. And I think that since the police department here gets over 1/3 of our budget, we need to be making sure that they are not just reactive, but they're proactive. And this is a street outreach team that I think we could implement in Omaha that is a specific team that responds to homeless calls. And they have had outstanding results. They've saved the city a lot of money because we know, again, when you're just reacting and arresting homeless people, they just it's not addressing the root cause. So I think that, yeah, updating the housing policy, defining a few things would be very helpful, and then utilizing the way that we spend money with the police force by creating the HOTS or some iteration of that, or also as they respond to mental health. There's a CAHOOTS program in Eugene, Oregon. The Douglas County Commissioners have brought it up. I'd like the City Council to partner with the county to make that a reality.
Thank you, Sarah. Question number 3. As part of the budgeting process, the council may revise the expenditure side of the budget by increasing, decreasing, inserting, or deleting appropriation items. Which areas may be priorities for you in the next budget cycle? Sarah, you're first.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, I'm really interested in more of a participatory budgeting style. It's taxpayers' dollars, and I've been hearing a lot that the taxpayers aren't feeling engaged and involved in the decision making. So I think that it would be important to, since currently it's a strong mayor situation, the mayor writes the budget and the city council, yes, just kind of votes up or down. I was appreciative of some of what Pete did with the mental health aspect. I think that we need to ideally determine as a community what our spending priorities are. As a representative, it's my job to listen to what the community wants. And I have heard that, again, we need to get serious about mental health. We need to get serious about what our police department is actually doing, and allocating more money for affordable housing. A lot of it comes down to, you know, the budget shows what our community's priorities are. And at this point, it doesn't feel that it's a participatory situation. I think a lot of other communities have proven how that can be done. And in order for Omahans to really feel like their dollars are being well spent, it needs to come down to a little bit better participation.
Thank you, Sarah. Pete, you're up next.
Yes, thanks. A few things. In this last budget process, I did feel like we weren't responding to what the community was asking for and what the community testified in front of the city council for. And a number of the needs we all know are there, underlying needs in our community that can really help address what we're hearing from our constituents, but also in the long term, save money to the city and help our residents. And for that reason, I voted against the entire budget this time. I just didn't think it did anything new in the respects to address things like poverty or unemployment or mental health, like I mentioned. And those things are important items we need to pay attention to and be involved with to move our city forward. And so I agree. I would enjoy a city budget process that's more participatory. It is highly driven by the administration and the mayor's office, as is the capital improvement plan. We have been successful at times in amending that plan with, say, more housing inspectors, or the mental health strategy I was talking about. Or I amended the budget to include funding for the Police Athletic League that benefits at-risk kids. Today, we supported an allocation to the Youth Step Up program, summer youth jobs for at-risk kids. Things like that I'd like to see much more of a focus on, that are preventative in nature and really address these underlying needs, but are tough to sometimes get accomplished when you need 4 votes and frequently 5 votes to get something done through the budget process we currently have.
Thank you, Pete. Question number 4. What do you see as the city's greatest challenge, and how would you address that challenge? Pete, you're first.
Well, I think it's still the COVID-19 pandemic, and making sure we're being cautious in our approach and talking to public health experts about making sure we get through this in a safe way that preserves hospital capacity. We are seeing the data starting to trend the right way in terms of positivity rates and cases per 100,000 people. That's what we follow every week in cooperation with the county health director. But that has plateaued in the last week or two. So we need to be cautious and make sure, as vaccines roll out and supposedly hit the general population by May 1st, that we're doing all we can to make that go smoothly, and then reopen our economy. So to me, that's issue number 1. But again, we can't stop there. We need to get to the underlying issues of some of the problems we're seeing, and some of the problems that are outgrowths, I think, of the pandemic, like mental health and affordable housing and jobs and unemployment, things that are very important to our future.
Thank you, Pete. Sarah, take it away.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that, you know, when Dr. Adipur declared kind of a dual health emergency, COVID-19 and racism, I'm not hearing enough about racism. We live in a segregated city. We just have to, you know, I talk a lot about courageous conversations because this is hard stuff. I'm a, you know, privileged white girl from Midtown. So I need to use my privilege as a tool and really work to address the fact that racism is real. We listened to countless residents over this last summer. You know, gratefully the legislator had listening sessions and I heard them. And I feel like a number of people that were standing up there crying their eyes out, hands shaking, holding their pieces of paper because they were so upset by this. I don't feel that we've had enough of a consistent response to that. We talk about COVID all the time, and that's crucial, of course, but Black and brown neighbors are disproportionately affected by COVID, and we are not naming racism and talking about it enough. And that's something that I think a lot of the community is ready to address. We just, in District 1, just a few weeks ago, there was a bomb left at the Nebraska Chinese Association. I think that that is horrifying. We talk about wanting to be an inclusive city. We're not doing enough to make all of the people from all of the beautiful backgrounds that live here want to stay here, which turns into people leaving the city, which turns into a whole lot of other issues. But the main thing is building an inclusive city means addressing racism. We cannot fix what we won't focus on.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, now we've reached the segment where candidates are allowed. Sorry, I think we have time for another question. All right, so question number 5. Please explain your thoughts on merging the Omaha City and Douglas County governments. Sarah, you're first.
That is a big question, and I'm excited to talk about it because I think that in one sense, I think that they maybe could be kept separate because they both have such full agendas. But I really think that even if they are kept as separate entities, there could be a lot more collaboration between the two entities. I think that basically, when I've heard recently the Cahoots program that I brought up earlier, Marianne Borgeson, the commissioner with the Douglas County, as the commissioner for Douglas County, brought that up. I think that's something that it would be really interesting to see the city council collaborate more. There are a lot of overlapping issues, so it's crucial to update our communication strategy. That's something that I have found over the years to be pretty disappointing. So many times different departments aren't speaking. Planning and public works don't know what's happening with parks. And I think a lot of times it seems to be the same case with Douglas County and the city council. So I think whether or not they're combined, that could go either way. I think it might be important to have that many people taking care of all of these issues, but I really expect more from the communication between the two entities so that when we're able to tackle problems together, we can have a lot better outcomes than just kind of disparate silos of the different commissioners and city council.
Thank you, Sarah. Pete, take it away.
So I do support that, and I always have. We were working on that many years ago and realized that it's going to take a change in state law to really allow that mechanism to be successful. But I do think now with Omaha and its planning jurisdiction basically being 93% of the county, there's not a lot of reasons not to do it. And I think that was also evident during the recent COVID relief fund efforts that came down through the county, but not the city, and how clunky that was and how that could have gone so much better if we're all on the same page working with that and designating those priorities and getting that money out to people that need it the most. Interestingly, when you study city-county mergers across the country, the ones that have been successful aren't really the ones that are sold on saving money. They don't always save a lot of money, but they produce efficiencies. And that's very important to constituents, I think, and very important to economic development. So frequently, the strongest argument and strongest case study for city-county mergers is the economic growth and approach they produce together with their business communities. And I think in Omaha, that'd be a very advantageous approach as well. So it's probably more complicated now, especially with our pension discussion and how challenging that is for the city. But I think now that we've got that largely addressed and have an approach there, there is a means by which to do this, and that's something I would like to pursue.
Thank you, Pete. Okay, next question. What will you do to ensure a diverse viewpoint is involved in your decision-making process? Pete, you're first.
Yeah, I think that's very important. And one of the outgrowths of all we were hearing this summer is that the city council, Councilman Gray and I intentionally put some issues on our city council agenda so that folks could come down to the city county building and testify in a safe space and have the whole community and media pick up their concerns and listen to the issues that were important. We thought that was very critical to do. I've also engaged a lot of young people on the way, mostly over Zoom, given the times we're in, on those conversations too, because I think that's absolutely important. And there were so many new voices to the mix this time that maybe haven't been engaged in politics or local government previously. And that's a good thing, right? We just need to figure out how to better engage them and their interests and to really get that addressed. We've had forums across the entire city, both in my district and my neighborhood associations, with groups like the Empowerment Network that has a massive structure in terms of networking and public input. But sometimes a lot of the new and younger voices haven't been engaged in those groups or don't know of them, or maybe that's not how they want to engage. So we need to express and look for new ways to do that, including technology. And that's also one reason why we made our city council meetings available by Zoom now, so folks can do that and we can hear more, not just from our neighborhoods, but from people across the entire city.
Thank you, Pete. Sarah, take it away.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that it is definitely important to make sure that we have a much more diverse representation from elected leaders to the voices that we're listening to. Something that I am interested in looking into is addition to the Zoom amendment. That's very good. Pete knows that I'm a big supporter of that. I think what is also important is to figure out what we can do to allow more voices to be part of the equation. Tuesdays at 2:00 is not a very conducive time for most working folks. I mean, these days, everyone's schedule is pretty funky, and the Zoom thing has helped, but I think it's pretty embarrassing that it's 2021 and we don't have the opportunity to have any language except for English. ASL has to be requested 24 hours in advance. We know there are so many languages being spoken in Omaha, and you shouldn't have to ask your government to accommodate for you. They should be working to accommodate you. So I think that it's just a very intentional thing that we need to get real about. The other thing is, there have been a lot of new voices involved in these conversations over the last year because a lot of folks are so frustrated that they are stepping up and doing whatever they can to get attention. And some city councilors are kind of condescending, frankly, not you, Pete, but a lot of folks feel like they're being talked down to, and that's got to change. I would really like to get the shame out of government. Everybody doesn't know everything. Of course, if you claim to know everything, you're lying to yourself. So we need to take the shame out of it and encourage more conversation.
Thank you, Sarah. Last question. Please explain why you do or do not support charter schools. Sarah, you're up first.
Well, I am also an Omaha Central High graduate, and so I'm a strong supporter of public schools. I know that we have had a very tough year. Our teachers are basically exploited. The amount of work that they've had to put in to keep up with all of this is ridiculous, and I am a huge supporter of keeping public schools open and better funded. The fact that our teachers are having to pay out of their own pockets from their own meager incomes to buy pencils and paper for their students is insulting and disgraceful. And I think that school choice is important, but I think that it's really important to make sure that our public schools are well supported, well funded, and well attended. Because if we make sure that our students are engaged in their classrooms and are feeling supported with mental health, with diversity in AP classes. I was really impressed with what youth can do this summer. There was an organization, of students who are really sick of a lot of things that are going on. And I think that we need to actually listen to our students and invest in them and listen to their needs, and then not only listen, but act on their requests. And so, yes, I definitely support public schools and listening to what teachers and students need.
Thank you, Sarah. Pete, take it away.
Yes, I agree. I'm a huge proponent of public schools as well. I went to all public schools growing up in Omaha. My kids do. I think it's a diversity experience that you can't replicate anywhere else. And I do have a lot of private schools in my district, and I think that's fine, and I support them as well. They're very, very good schools also. But I think when it comes to public funding should go to public schools, not to private schools or charter schools. I feel very strongly about that as well. And also I'm very supportive of our teachers that have had quite a bit of stress this year, and really have been essential workers to our entire infrastructure, not just our families. So I agree that's very important, and it's not something I would support. I frequently say, and I just had a text from Cheryl Logan while we were sitting here, that I think one of the most important things in our city right now isn't really anything the city's doing, but it's what our public schools are doing. It's so important for Cheryl Logan and Omaha Public Schools to be successful with, over 50,000 kids attending there, 70% non-white. That's the future of our community, and that's a future we need to embrace, and we need to make sure that our schools are operating effectively to give them the future they deserve. And so to me, her success and the success of our public school districts are one of the most important things we can do and be working on right now together to make sure we're successful in the future.
Thank you, Pete. Now we've reached the segment where candidates are allowed 1-minute closing statements. Pete, you're up first.
Well, thanks again to the League of Women Voters, and thanks, Sarah, for being on the call here. We appreciate the forum and appreciate the opportunity to discuss these really important issues. I'm proud of my many accomplishments since serving District 1, but I think there's a lot more to do. That's evident by our conversation here tonight. I think we all agree about that. First and foremost, I do think we need to remain focused on keeping our citizens safe and leading the economic recovery to our economy from the pandemic. But then we need to continue to prioritize things I know are important to City Council District 1, public safety, neighborhood street resurfacing, but then really address other important issues like public transit and mental health and police community relations. These are complex issues that need experienced leadership to help address, one that listens to people and brings people together. That's my track record. That's what I think is important. And I think in a city like Omaha, when you have government, business, philanthropy, and neighborhoods working together, there's nothing we can't accomplish. So I appreciate the trust you've placed in me, and I appreciate your support, and I look forward to focusing on the future of our community together.
Thank you, Pete. Sarah, take it away.
Thank you so much once again to the League of Women Voters and to Pete for being here. It's always fun chatting with you. I would just encourage everyone to visit my website, sj4oma.com, and you'll see what I prioritize, which is open communication, transportation and mobility justice, a climate action plan, public safety, ranging from our city's COVID response to police reform. By partnering with my fellow progressive candidates, we can take quick and decisive steps to implement positive change. Little less talk, a lot more action. Using tools like the city charter and master plan, we can literally redesign and update Omaha's priorities in a way that's responsible and acknowledges the call for systemic change we all heard over the past year. If we take this opportunity now to elect new leadership with fresh ideas, we will have a stronger, more resilient, and more inclusive Omaha. Again, I'm Sarah Johnson. Thank you for your time. Look forward to earning your vote on April 6th.
Thank you, Sarah. This concludes our forum for Omaha City Council District 1 primary election. The League thanks all the candidates for participating. For the League of Women Voters of Greater Omaha, I'm Jasmine Frazier, reminding you to inform yourself about the issues and candidates. And on April 6th, go vote, Omaha.